So let's dig into this first part. Now, a bit of backstory here. So
Do you think that people that listen to our podcast are tired of the word attribution?
probably
But it is our best performing episodes anyway. So I don't think you can get enough attribution in your life when you're in a good market.
that could be true. I mean, write in and tell us if you hate us talking about attribution, and maybe we'll stop. I think the problem is, right, it's just so heavily debated,
Polarizing.
both in public forums and then also in behind the scenes within companies, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we debate it so much here, because it's not a simple do X and everyone's going to be happy, right? There's a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of stuff that you need to try and figure out. And that's a bit of what we're going to talk about today. So just to set the scene. Now, when it comes to attribution, there is attribution data and there is how you use the attribution data. And this is the thing that we really want to break down today and really try and give our perspective on, because so much we hear this from clients, we hear this on LinkedIn, we hear this at events, we hear this all over the place. Attribution data is the problem. It's like, oh, you're doing multi-touch attribution, you're tracking all the touch points, and that's a problem. You're going to argue over credit, or like what gets the percentage of the attribution. Oh, you're tracking the funnel and you're trying to tie that back to one particular source. That data is the problem. It's going to make people argue.
First touch. I think we should do last touch. I think we should just,
And it always comes down to, okay, you're going to set up this tracking, you're going to get this data, and that's going to create division and argument and a bad culture when it comes to credit. So Chrissy, maybe I want to get your take on this, because is the attribution data the problem, or is there, I mean, I know where we're going to go with this already, obviously, but like, what do you think? Is there something else that maybe is at play here?
Well, I think actually there's two things, because your attribution data can be a problem. But I think what people think is like there's this silver bullet of like figuring out the right attribution, mainly for them with the goal of like proving marketing, proving sales, trying to give credit. And usually it's tied back to goals, because they're like, oh, we need to actually be able to attribute what team drove this level of pipeline. And I think it's not, in that case, you can get the data to be as perfect, which we all know is not possible, to be as perfect as possible. And you give those teams that data, they're still going to find issues with it. They're going to find like, oh, that partner deal. Well, marketing started emailing that person like, a year ago, and they attended a webinar, but then the partner sent the deal referral over. There's gonna be cases where a sales outbound starts a funnel, and that person also did a marketing activity maybe 6 months prior. They're not going to get the credit. People are going to find issues. Also, depending on the model that you use, it can not show you certain channels that maybe some people are also heavily tied to from a goal perspective, especially like field marketers and whatnot. And so we talk about attribution a lot. We talk about funnel attribution, which we suggest a tipping point. We talk about multi-touch attribution. Those methodologies for attribution are good, and we can tell people how to set up the data the right way. But I think where everyone's assumptions that attribution is bad or attribution is wrong or their data is wrong is actually because it's not telling them the story that they want, or it's not giving their team the credit that they feel like they deserve
or need
to
keep their job, right?
Yeah. And I think depending on the size of the organization too, or how, let's be honest, if you're a early stage startup and you're in marketing and you're a CMO that say just started 3 months ago, it's not gonna look good for them. Pipeline numbers are mainly going to be tied to sales. A lot of stuff isn't going to be tied to their marketing programs because they haven't had time. It's a lagging indicator. We talk about this a lot. And also, they haven't even built up a program or any type of marketing or any type of brand. And we see this a lot. And then that CMO panics, right? And then the CEO is like, where's all the pipeline? Like, we hired you for a reason. Da, 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 da. And then that creates like more stress, which then trickles down to their team, which makes them start doing things that isn't good marketing, just to try and surface up some pipeline right away. And so I think that's the case too, where people don't realize it's not really the data. It's just the nature of what happens with like creating revenue. Like, it's just, we need to use our noggins a bit more. But I think also there needs to be a little bit of education. And also we have like very high, not standards, but I think we have these assumptions from every team about like how things should be, how things should look, and that's coming down from maybe past history, or I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's never usually the data or the data structure. It's always just the people using it, and they're using it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, the data can be set up wrong, right? But like,
It can, yeah.
assuming it's not, and you think about kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning, there's like the different types. Like you've got, you're trying to try back to like a single touch, like a final tipping point kind of thing, or you have the multi-touch. Now, the people on both sides of those will say like the other side can be used for the credit game, like even more. Like for example, with multi-touch, I've been in hours of meetings where people are like, why did this touch point get 5% of this opportunity and not 25% of this opportunity, right? With the funnel attribution, it's a similar thing, but maybe it's a little bit more simple because it's like, okay, well, this opportunity got 100% from this marketing channel, but then sales thinks they went outbound or partner, whatever, kind of like what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they both have the potential for you to get into that meeting and just go down a rabbit hole and just debate over what should have got the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that has nothing to do with the issues with the data, right? Like George Box said, I say this over and over again, the statistician, every model is wrong, but some are useful.
Yeah.
And if you go in with that mentality where this is not perfect, this is wrong in many ways, but it's right enough that we're going to be able to get some insight out of this, then you're not going to hopefully get into that battleground where you're trying to get the perfect source or the perfect multi-touch distribution across the touch points related to the opportunity. But a lot of that issue starts with the culture, right? If the CEO and the CRO and the CMO and the partner lead, maybe that should be what partner marketing should be. Marketing. Yeah, that's partner marketing. I just invented a new word. if they're all fighting over other things and then the culture is to fight over attribution, they're going to find a way to look at the data and fight over it.
Mm-hmm.
But if everyone does realize this is a team sport, we're all in this together, and we're setting up these models to help us improve and help us understand, hopefully what is generating pipelines, so we can do a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, and optimize over time.
Yeah.
Then the data isn't going to lead you down this credit battle.
Totally.
But it's not the data's fault.
No.
The data is just the data.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you use it that creates the drama.
Yeah, and like with this data, because it's never going to be perfect. Like, think about just like how buyers buy. Think about, I think recently I bought like a new protein powder, right? I first saw something about it like on social from someone. They had like a discount code. I kind of like noodled on it. Then that brand started like texting me. We're like, oh, why don't you use this discount code? It was better than the one that the other like influencer had. I used it. Like, they're going to look at giving attribution to me back to like that text or whatever. But really, where I first heard about it. But that thing is the reason why I ended up purchasing 2 bags, not just one, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get more of a discount. And so what you want to do is track both those things, right? If you can. But you have to know that like it's not perfect. There's probably that's a very simple thing. I can actually tie those two behaviors together. But there's so many other things that can play a role into decision making. It's not so like linear in that way. And so we're just trying to do our best. And some people, I've in the past thought, okay, well, this data can be used almost like a compass to tell you, like, are you on the right path with your marketing? Are you not? Da, 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 or like a map. I think it's more even just like you are using like a modern car and they tell you when, you're out of, like, you could get into a car crash or something's in the way or something. Like, it's more to give your team nudges on,
I was going
like,
to use the term nudge as well. Yeah.
like a nudge on, like, this is good. Like, keep doing this. Also, what's not there and what's not in the data, and there's been enough time from those channels and experiments where you should have seen pipeline already. That's enough to say, like, okay, maybe that doesn't work out for us, or maybe we just need to adjust.
So what's your take on if so one of the reasons why we ended up having this chat today is because I got into a good conversation / debate with someone around if you do some kind of like pipeline attribution, funnel attribution model, and you're tying that back to the tipping point, there are tipping point types, right? There's kind of tipping points that come from marketing, there's tipping points that come from sales, there's tipping points that come from partner. And their point of view was that if you think about it this way, it's a recipe for an argument between those teams. My point of view was we need to think about it that way because each of those tipping point types requires, different operations and different ways of tracking. And so we need to identify them so we know how to track the data.
Yeah.
And then by identifying them, we want to be able to label, if we're using like our custom object, for example, each custom object record based on the tipping point type, so we know. But then it's down to the company whether they use that to kind of pit the teams against each other. So what's your take on that? Do you just not track that?
No.
Because then, like, if you take that to its logical extreme, then you shouldn't track any tipping point source, right? Because you could still. My point was like, if you've got a tipping point time of marketing, sales, whatever, maybe you take out the label marketing sales, but like level down, you're still looking at what type of marketing channel it was or what type of outbound it was, so you can still figure it out. So you'd have to take out that layer too. So you literally have to have no tipping point source back to that funnel or pipeline. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree.
Do you agree with me saying like, well, that's not the right way of going about it? You should still just have it and just make.
You should still just have it. And the reason why I think that is because, one, if you don't do it that way, you're missing out on a huge part of your pipeline that you're not like tracking properly or the same way. What you want is a unified data model and approach. I think also people need to realize, and this is my tip, I think, for some people who maybe own like the analytics, is think about even not showing all the data to all of the teams in one format. Like, try and even build out reporting and dashboards for like the different groups. So show sales, how many outbound funnels they started, what's the conversion rate, how has that changed over time, especially since they've implemented things. Tie the cadence or sequence name to the funnel and see, like, dig into, are there certain ones that are, helping with velocity. Same way with field marketing. You maybe are going to focus more on multi-touch attribution data and not so much first touch, but maybe show them first touch for some of their channels. And then separately, you maybe have like your demand gen team and then customer marketing as well. They have programs too. And I've done this in past because I was in one org where everyone was comfortable viewing everything at the same time because they knew we all had like our hands in the pot and it was fine. I went to the next org and people were fighting over credit and attribution. And then some people were feeling like their channels were looking bad.
When you say which orgs?
Marketo was the good one. I'll say his.
I think I know which one might be the one where there's been fighting. Maybe I worked there as well.
Yeah.
Not CS2, by the way.
Well, the interesting thing is Marketo, I think, ended up going down that path a little bit. And so this is what I'm saying. Like, I think it comes down from an executive standpoint too, like you mentioned. But
it's all about the cultural side.
The culture, yeah. And every time I hit an org where it was like, okay, it's 40, 40, 20, pipeline creation, 40 from marketing, 40 from sales, 20 from partner. Like, that is like a recipe for disaster. 100%. Do not do that.
So what do you do though? So this is the bit where maybe I'm still trying to perfect my point of view, because I agree you don't, like, the data is going to be there, right? You're going to be able to say whether it's 40% marketing, 40% sales, 40, 20% partner. And so if you're able to say that, then one side of the argument is like, well, okay, let's set, we want to be able to goal set, right?
Yeah.
To be able to drive the right behavior.
Or hold people accountable.
Yeah. And therefore, we have a total pipeline target, right? So even if you don't call it 40, 40, 20, you call it marketing. We've got a $100 million pipeline goal. Marketing, I wanted to get 40, sales 40, partner 20. Everyone still knows that's the percentage. And then they're going to be like, well, why did that opt to go to sales and why didn't it go to marketing? How do you get around that?
Well, I almost think of it as like almost like a family. Like if one person is not, and I've been feeling this a lot, like
kind of like a Thanksgiving, like you bring the turkey, I'll bring the
well, right, like if you just give them all one goal, it's like, okay, today family, our goal is to like get to the beach, right? Okay,
this is gonna get too real now.
That some people, that there's like some people that maybe are gonna like struggle a bit more to get everything ready to go to the beach. But if they,
is that person 5 years old?
Yeah. But then others where it maybe needs a little bit less lift. And then the getting ready happens like right at the end. That's like almost like a partner, right? But I would then know, okay, in order for us all to get to the beach, though, we need to like contribute. And so in some ways, if they all just have a shared goal, if they don't make it there, if they don't all make, if they don't hit that goal to get to the beach, like no one wins in some cases. And the reason why I think that that's good is that no one's like leaning on their laurels for someone else to maybe also hit that goal, but also they're thinking about, okay, how can I make partners successful? How can I still support sales to do outbound in a more effective way? And then how can I make our marketing great? And then alternatively, like how can I make marketing great if I'm on the sales side? Like how can I really take their leads that they've followed, generate for us and bring them down funnel? And that is better. If you want to have like general like ideas of planning where your pipeline is going to come from, I think that is fair. But I think when you're tying too much of this, like, okay, if everyone doesn't hit the goal, but marketing hits their goal and they get comped on that, but then like partner doesn't because maybe they hit like 19%, that's what I don't agree with. Because I think it's like in those individualized goals, everyone's just going to get to their goal. They're not going to care about whether everyone else did. And so you need to just think about like people and behavior and stuff like that. And so it should just still be a shared goal. Yes, you can say, okay, realistically, we're going to plan for you're likely only going to get 20% of the pipeline. Do that. That's fine. But it still should be, okay, but we're all not going to get bonused unless we all hit the same goal.
Yeah. Everyone has to be in it together. It's kind of like a win or lose together situation. Create that. I also think the trend, which has gone back and forth since we've been in this world over the last 14 years, but like I like SDRs as part of marketing.
Me too.
Because then at least you've at least eliminated one division point.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, SDRs, you've got a pipeline target of 10 million, marketing, you've got a pipeline target of 30 million. And it's like, well, marketing is like, well, I need SDRs to follow up on my buyers that I'm bringing them. The SDRs are like, well, no, I just want to go outbound and bring my own ones in. So they're part of marketing. They've got a shared goal. I think that definitely is a very practical way to eliminate some division there. Mm-hmm. It also helps because the sales team are getting comped on commission, right, for selling deals. Mm-hmm. And they don't give a shit, like, really where those deals come from. They're going to work the deal that's going to close, right? So for them, it's like, just go for it. Yeah, like maybe you want them to do some outbound and there's some, you want to encourage them to do that. But like if they're crushing their goals, right, or they're all, and it's all just coming from inbound or from the marketing and SDR pipe or the pipeline, the partner pipe, and they're so busy, your sales team is just maxed out with all of those deals. Do you need them to do outbound?
No, I totally agree with that.
So you don't necessarily need sales to have 40% outbound only target if they're crushing all of the opportunities that are coming to them from everywhere else. And then partner generally, you can think of that slightly outside of the marketing context, because a lot of the deals that come through partners are so like relationship based. I think it's a bit more clear cut. So anyway, there's a few kind of ideas, but ultimately, the data is the data. Use it the right way to not sow division within your team, but really it starts from the cultural top down. It doesn't start from the data going up. So